free. We were all about changing the way that entrepreneurship was taught to make it possible for anyone to start a business. Those were our original kind of sort of mission statement, I suppose. And I think since then, it's probably evolved a bit. I think we're much more now about making it possible for anyone to create the life that they want. The business is one part of that. That can help people accelerate to creating the life they want. It can help them spend more time having a sense of purpose. But we've started to encompass conversations about personal finance. So it isn't just about entrepreneurship anymore. We've launched a Rebel Finance School. It's helping people take control of their finances and get out of debt.
Welcome to Founder Metrics by Vested, the podcast where we dive into the world of hotshot business leaders and the metrics that drive their game-changing companies forward. I'm your host, Ifti Nasser, CEO and founder of Vested.
Hi, I'm Ifti, and this is Founder Metrics. Today, we've got Simon Paine, the founder of Rebel Business School, joining us. And it's a real pleasure to have you with us, Simon. Do you want to just give a bit of a background to yourself and what you do here?
I'm not an entrepreneur by trade. I came into entrepreneurship late. I started the Rebel Business School. It was probably something like my 9th or 10th attempt at business. I had mixed results beforehand. I set it up with my co-founder, Alan Donegan, in 2011. We came up with it. And for the last 10 years, we've been teaching people different ways of starting a business that don't involve business plans or funding. We've been helping people bootstrap and get started and, typically focusing on those people that find business a little harder because of their life circumstances. And we're up to 30,000 people in 10 countries now. So we're very proud of those.
30,000.
Yeah.
How many businesses have you helped launch?
Well, it's a really interesting question because as we're going to dive into metrics, at this moment in time, I couldn't tell you the answer. And I think, which is interesting. And I think, and I know we'll get into this, but actually, like many of the people that we see, so I work in thirds. So we got a third of people that come to one of our programs. A third of them will start something very, very quickly. Usually, something like between sort of 35% of people will make a sale within 2 or 3 days of meeting us. The second third, they're in progress. They might take a few weeks, a few months. It's not quite the right time, or they're figuring things out. They're trying different things. They're experimenting and so on. The final third, and this is the third that I haven't figured out how to track yet. This is the third of people that will send me an email in 4 years' time saying, "Hey, Simon, I came to one of your programs and learned how to start a business without spending any money. And I finally set one up. And I'll only know about those if they send me the damn email." So interesting.
I'm sure we can help you in terms of keeping a track on those from maybe something that we might be able to do after this session. But you started life as a policeman.
Yeah.
Tell us about that and what
It was
changed.
a family business. Yeah, my dad was a cop, and like all teenagers, not all teenagers, many teenagers will have moments of conflict with parents. And he said to me, I really don't want you to join the police like I did. I want other things for you. I've given you an opportunity of a better education than the one I had. Go off and use your brain, kiddo. So I said, great, I want to join the police. And then he was grumpy with me. And then when I joined, he was very happy with me. And then I said I was going to leave. He was very grumpy with me again, and then he was very happy. So I don't know what was going on, but yeah, I for as long as I can remember, I've had a social justice thing, like fighting for the small guy, and I think that's a golden thread. But looking back, it makes more sense than at the time. But I spent 10 years as a cop down in Hampshire, and then I left that in 2003 with I suppose like 2 projects. I was either going to be a world famous rock star or a successful entrepreneur, and the fact that I'm on this podcast with you tells you which one was more successful so far. There's still time, Ifti, but yeah.
So what instrument did you play?
Well, I'm a singer, really. Play? Yeah, I'm a singer. I can play guitar. I think it was more of a prop in the early days, but I can play guitar. I can play piano badly, and drums even worse than that. But I like to get a sound out of most instruments if I can.
So what was the trigger for leaving the police?
I think it was a mixture. I think at the time, it felt, I felt this is a very negative environment for me, and I feel like I need to get away from it. I remember walking through the corridors of one of the police stations down in Portsmouth in the UK, and I remember thinking to myself, it's just a bit of a glum place. You know, everyone's very serious. The walls are very plain, and there's cells, and then it's just not a very nice place to be around. And I started to sense that. And also, I felt that, I mean, I was still a boy when I joined. I'd just turned 20, and I felt like I'd outgrown it. And I thought, there's a big world out there. I've got ideas. I don't think I can try these ideas here. I want to go and explore some different things. Looking back, I think what was going on there, I was stressed. I was worn out. I was suffering early stages of PTSD, and that was sort of pushing me to get out. But the story that I was telling myself, I figured out how to leverage trauma and turn it into business ideas. You know, the story was telling myself was, I'm a creative entrepreneur and I need to go out there and make, go find a unicorn that I can sell. You know, that was where I was at.
And then you ended up with the Rebel Business School.
Yeah.
Where'd that little idea come? My
business partner, Alan, he went to a government-funded business advisory service around about 2008. It was called Business Link.
Right.
And he went to Business Link, and the experience of Business Link almost put him off starting a business. Now, Alan, he'll probably listen to this. In fact, he will listen to this. I'm sure of it.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
That'll be one.
Alan's, he's white. He's middle class. He's got a private school education. His dad was a successful entrepreneur. He's got a 6-figure earning wife at the time, supportive family, incredibly resourceful, relentless personal developer, loads of ideas and cash in the bank. Mm-hmm. Now, if the traditional approach to starting a business is putting this guy off, what's it doing for everybody else? So my boss, her name is Deborah Wyatt, awesome lady. She's walking through the offices of Business Link Southeast. I was running one of their contracts down there, and she's holding these bits of paper, a 3-page handwritten letter of complaint, right? And she's looking around, and she obviously spots me out of the corner of her eye. She comes over. I think I was doing my shoelace under the desk.
There you go.
Oh, what are you doing down there? Oh, yeah. Okay, this piece of paper is for me, is it? Right. And I thought to myself, like, who the hell writes a 3-page handwritten? Like, we've got email. It's 2008. And I went to meet Alan, and they call it service recovery, don't they? You know, I was there to recover the service. Yeah. What can I do to help this guy? And off I went. We met in Starbucks in Winchester. He came bowling up to me. He's quite a big, strong guy, Alan. He came bowling up to me, shook my hand, ordered me a bucket of Americano, and he said, "What can I do to help you?" I remember staring at him, like, really confused. Like, I'm here to help you. You're the one with the 3-page handwritten letter of complaint, you know. And we made friends. And I think we both knew that starting a business with a business plan isn't right for most people. But that is the method which most people get. It's taught in schools, it's taught in colleges, it's taught in universities. You go to an accountant, a business bank manager, they'll say, "Oh, you got an idea for a business? Well, you need a business plan." And that's where so many people get stuck. So we just reverse the process. Well, let's not start with a business plan. Let's end with a business plan, but start with a sale. And that's where the idea of the Rebel Business School began.
Okay, so what is the philosophy of the business school for Rebels?
Yeah, I think we've been very, very anti-debt since the beginning. And I think there's a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is getting access to cash is not possible for lots and lots of people, either psychologically. Mm-hmm. So, for example, some of the different ethnic minorities that we work with in London will not go anywhere near a bank because they know what the answer is going to be. And if they have a belief that it takes money to make money, then their business idea will stop there and then. So part of that philosophy, the early stages of the business school, was all about starting a business debt-free. We were all about changing the way that entrepreneurship was taught to make it possible for anyone to start a business. Those were our original kind of sort of mission statement, I suppose. And I think since then, it's probably evolved a bit. I think we're much more now about making it possible for anyone to create the life that they want. That business is one part of that. That can help people accelerate to creating the life they want. It can help them spend more time having a sense of purpose. But we've started to encompass conversations about personal finance. So it isn't just about entrepreneurship anymore. We've launched a Rebel Finance School. It's helping people take control of their finances and get out of debt.
Sounds like a very worthy endeavour. But how many people did you say that you've gotten through the The business school?
The business school's about 22,500.
22,500.
Yeah.
And you don't know how many businesses, because as you say, you don't keep it. You're not able to keep track of them. But I mean, it does seem like it's got a massive following now. When you were setting it up, or as it is now, what would you say are the key metrics? Not the MRR or profitability or whatever. What is it for you that allows you to see what's happening in the business? What are the metrics that you look for?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was thinking about this on the way over here today. I was thinking, like, what have they been and how have they changed over time? I think in the early days, the numbers that were most important, the stuff that we were very closely measuring. For example, I can tell you the exact numbers even now of what happened in 2015.
Right.
The key metrics were the number of months that it takes to convert a lead into a sale. Like I say, what our sales cycle period was like. Now, when we first started in 2012, I ran one program with Alan. I went off to corporate life for a couple of years because there wasn't enough cash in the business. I came back to join him. When I came back in 2015, we had there was nothing in the calendar, nothing in the events calendar. I left the best job I've ever had, earning the most money I've ever earned, somewhere in Singapore drinking cocktails. I swapped it for a community centre not too far from where we are today in North London. And my runway was 6 months, so we had to make money in 6 months. But our sales cycle is 5 months. So we had to come out of the blocks really quickly. We sent 472 emails to every single chief executive of every single social housing organisation in the UK. At the time, in 2015, there were 472 of them. We sent them 472 emails, and we got something like 60 replies back. Out of those 60 replies, 35 of them were out of office. Everyone else ignored us. Out of the 25 meaningful replies that we got, 5 of them were, don't ever contact us again, remove us from your database, we're not interested in working with you, and so on. That left me 20. Out of the 20, 8 of them were the sorts of things like, not for us, we've already got this, we don't really invest in this, thanks anyway, those sort of messages. That left me with 12. I had 12... the sort of sounds interesting. Can you send me some more information? That I had to somehow get them on a phone call, and that's what we were doing. It's almost like a war room. I can remember in my kitchen at home. I had 2 Irish coffee glasses, and I'd written down number of sales. This is really bootstrapped, number of sales emails, number of sales calls, and I'd written on a. I'll show you the photo after, and then. Every time I sent an email, and it had to be an email that landed. If I got an out of office or a bounce back, it doesn't count. It has to be an email that lands. I put one of my kids' little plastic toys, they're called Moshi Monsters, goes in the Irish coffee glass. Number of sales calls, and it had to be a meaningful land. Someone I had to pick up and, not get fobbed off. I had to speak to the decision maker. One of these Moshi Monsters goes in the Irish coffee glasses, and then over the course of the morning, of course, when the Irish coffee glasses get to the top, I get a reward. But, I wouldn't recommend Irish coffee because the sales calls started to drop off as the day went on. And that was really the early stages of us, of
That's
me.
an interesting metric.
Yeah.
For us or not.
And I think, having come from, my last job in the police was performance management. So my whole role was about metrics as a sort of staff officer kind of role. So when people said, the term KPI, I used to get a little bit twitchy, how can I make this more fun? How can I, and of course I turn that into a bit of social media content, and actually it becomes, sort of bringing KPIs, and we're still trying to do that now, as a more mature business, bringing KPIs to life in such a way that people will engage with them and people look forward to it. Imagine.
So what are your KPIs?
We measure, we measure a bunch of things. We put our effort and energy, more of our effort and energy until recently has been in the impact. So we've all about social impact. So the more impact that we can demonstrate, then the more power we've got in order to make sales.
Because impact is potentially just a subjective assessment, but how do you
we'll give you some
it?
examples. We've done this since right at the beginning. We've measured things like, so when someone comes through a Rebel Business School program, we measure their confidence before and after. We ask them some questions like confidence, about happiness, about business skills. We ask them some questions framed around self-efficacy, and we're measuring the distance that they travel between, where they were when they first arrived compared to how they leave. And typically, some of those are fantastic scalars to show people kind of coming out of our programs feeling really buoyant and confident. Some of the other things that we measure a bit more, what's the word? It's more about the sort of, asking for content from them, like what's your biggest light bulb moments, for example. And we ask people to tell us a bit about their story so we can capture, so it's not just about numbers, there's also some information around it to sort of bring it to life.
Bring it to colour.
We ask people questions about their backgrounds, so we can look at, for example, I can tell you that we've got 69-70% of our audience, this is tracked in this way for years, is female. 45% of our audience from different ethnic minorities. So we're asking questions about people's background. We're also asking people about their first sale. So that's become more important for us as a measure than it has for us tracking the long-term success.
What do you mean by their first sale? The first sale of the business that they've brought to the table with you, or the first time they did a sale transaction? Yeah,
and I think what we've recognised is the impact of our participants being able to hold someone else's money in their hand that they've created. And actually, and you'll know this better than anyone, business isn't a linear thing. So someone can come on a program, be hugely inspired, make a sale in a mini experiment, which is what we encourage. Our methodology is all about mini experiments, and then not start a business for 2 years. And that's where our challenges come, because have we had impact on that individual? Yeah, 100%. Have they come out of our program, more empowered? Have they come out more confident with some new skills? Yeah, they've got all of that stuff. But if I'm purely measuring their destination, that yes, I've been able to start a business, no, I haven't, it actually devalues what we're doing in some ways. Like, yeah, of course, that's a great outcome. I'll give you an example. There's a woman called Cara. She came on our course, one of our courses in Wales. She came on the program. She had some ideas for a side hustle. She was applying for jobs at the same time. She wasn't quite sure what she was doing. Applied for a job, having come onto a networking day. So she'd learned some networking skills. Her confidence was boosted. She applied for a job, went for the interview, didn't get the job. She then went home, thought to herself, well, I don't really like that I didn't get the job. I'm going to go back to them and ask for another interview. So, and she would never have done that if she hadn't have come through our program. And I think that's why when we think about what our version of entrepreneurship is not necessarily about a startup in conventional terms. I think it's about skills development, confidence, mindset.
And the courage to go back and say, no.
She went back and she got the damn job. She went back and said, I don't think I did my best job in the interview. Like, I don't know if you filled this role yet, but I would love to come and have another go at it. Like, she just immediately stood out. And, even if I was tracking the long-term success of the people that come through our program in terms of a business outcome, that still wouldn't have captured that just nugget. And she was on benefits, on universal credit. Something like a third of our audience that went up into COVID went into the high 40% of our audience on government benefits and unemployed and so on. That's it. And that's just to finish off and go back to where we were before about measuring social impact. What we do is we capture the percentage of people that come through our program on benefits, and then the percentage of people that are no longer on benefits as a result of coming on our program.
That's very tangible. That is very tangible.
I thought you'd like that one. And then, of course, for those, here's another challenge. For those that are prepared to tell us what their income levels are, we're also able to calculate a tax contribution. So if I can show that there's a benefit reduction as well as a tax contribution for the number of participants that come through, then we've got some really interesting numbers around. So we're tracking at each of our programs somewhere between £800,000 to £3 million worth of social
so
impact.
So are you getting
£3
million from the government?
If only. If only. We're some way off that.
If it's so tangible.
Yeah.
And so
we haven't cracked that one yet. We were still pushing with our existing business model, but I think there are some interesting conversations. Tell me about the
business model. How do you make money?
Yeah, so no one has ever paid to come to one of our programs, because the whole ethos was that we're challenging the belief that it takes money to make money. We couldn't really then say, yeah, you can start a business for free, but you have to spend 300 quid on this course or whatever.
Yeah.
So the course, all of our courses, all of our programs, all of our content is completely free. We've been able to protect that in the face of some challenges over the years.
How do you manage to do that? I mean, it's no easy job to provide such, provide any course for free. So how do you make sure that is
It's a sponsorship model, Ifty. So that the way that we've been able to do it is, and this came from me philosophizing back in 2009 or 10, that when we had the economic collapse in 2008, the availability of business support just went through the floor. I mean, in fact, the contract that I was working on, like I just got this big shiny new job as a regional director for Serco. I'm very excited, building my team, and then 8 months later, it was all gone. What I realised from that experience was that the only organisations that were left were social housing providers in the UK. Those are the only ones that had a will and they had cash to spend on supporting their residents in their communities. So we just, and this is what we teach at the business school, we just focused on the niche and found a kind of organisation that were willing to put money in to help their residents. So it's a sponsorship model. We do it on a straight sale basis. We sell projects to housing associations, and then perhaps more recently, over the last 4 or 5 years, the funding that we get, the sponsorship that we get from housing associations has dropped off. We've spent much more time, effort and energy working with local authorities. Yep. And then we've got some bigger contracts that have come from that as well.
They're an unorthodox starting point, I would have thought.
Yeah.
The councils makes more sense. Government sounds like an obvious target for support because, say your outcomes are tangible and measurable.
Yeah.
And there's so many initiatives that government have pushed out, whether it's R&D tax credits, SEI, SEIS, EMIs. They're all because of that tangible benefit that they can see. Actually, and sometimes it's intangible benefits, but they can see it on a portfolio effect. With yours, it's actually tangible.
Who should we speak to?
On an individual basis. I don't know, but maybe we should have a conversation afterwards.
I'd love that.
Maybe if somebody who knows who to talk to listens to this podcast, they'd be able to help.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a bit of a curious business because we were quite clear that whilst we operate like a social enterprise, really, we're a limited company. We've got shares, we've got a non-profit arm that we've just developed. But the whole thing was like, we didn't want to stand up and go, you need to sell things. Meanwhile, we get funding. we wanted to have it's a sales thing. I think,
it's a sell to the government.
Yeah.
Everything that, most of us do is a sale of some kind. It's a transaction to some degree or another. And the payment may well be cash. The payment may well be something else. It may well be equity. There is a transaction. And I think what you're doing is very worthy of the government rewarding you for that transaction so that you can do more of it and help even more people.
For sure. That's our goal. Yeah. It's just to scale the thing.
So in terms of that scaling, what are the things that you're looking at now that are the obstacles? Funding is one piece. What are the other challenges or hurdles that you've got to overcome from a scaling perspective?
Yeah, so I think from a scaling perspective, I suppose we've, like many businesses, we took a few steps back in 2020 for obvious reasons. In February 2020, we were an events company. In March 2020, we were not an events company anymore. We're an online training provider.
Yeah.
So that was an obstacle. I think the biggest scale challenge historically, and it's still in play now, is finding credible presenters, facilitators of our programs that we can afford. Because over the years, or certainly early years, Alan and I were delivering all of the programs, and we had lots of people say, I've been a trainer for 20 years, I've been a facilitator for 10 years, like, I'd love to come and deliver your programs. And we see them 3 or 4 minutes in front of our audience, they get eaten alive. Imagine a really diverse community audience, all sorts of mental health conditions in the room sometimes,
Okay.
every single cultural background that you can think of, every single educational level that you can think of. Our courses, they're almost like we ask our facilitators to be part comedian, part failed entrepreneur, part successful entrepreneur, experienced at delivering presentations comfortably, and they can hold the attention of a very diverse audience for 6 hours a day, every day for 2 weeks. And by the way, we haven't got much money to pay you. So
That's quite an ask.
It is quite an ask. And I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's taught us that, blended learning is the direction that we need to head in. I think that will help us scale. And what I mean by that is we've run our programs as like a hothouse boot camp. Since COVID, people don't really want to sit on Zoom for 6 hours a day, every day for 2 weeks anymore.
Well, even during COVID, they didn't want to.
No, we managed, thank goodness, the Westminster Council, for example, they were one of our biggest sponsors over the last few years. We managed to convince them to trial running one of our programs online, and thank goodness we did, because I wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened. But I didn't think that people were going to turn up for 2 weeks on Zoom. I wasn't even sure I was going to turn up for 2 weeks on Zoom. How do you even sit in front of a computer screen for that length of time? But luckily it went well. But since COVID has happened, also people don't really want to go in the room for 6 hours a day every day for 2 weeks either, because they've got parking, they've got travel to think about, they've got the kids to pick up from school, and there's still enough of an audience to make it viable. But that's not how you scale the thing. We're not going to change the world one community centre at a time. We need to be able to reach much, much bigger numbers. And that's the direction that we're headed in now. Like, if we can have 1 million learners enrolled within the next 5 years, then I think we would have done a reasonable job at scaling. But we need to, previously we would have needed to have cloned Alan, cloned me. And this sounds very egotistical, but we did find it really tricky. We've got a couple of presenters now that we're really excited about. And Angie and Casey and Laura, they've done a great job. But again, it's like one extra presenter every 5 months. Like, come on.
Could you ever expect Alan and Simon being cloned by AI?
Yeah, well, it's funny you should say that, actually. We've been exploring that over the last few weeks for obvious reasons. And what a horrendous thought for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, there are limitations of what two individuals can do as individuals in that type of organisation. But going forward now, where do you see the biggest opportunity, assuming that the funding piece is sorted and the carbon copies of Alan and Simon can be created one way or another? What's the next horizon for you, and how do you see that?
I think the next horizon. So we've dabbled a little bit internationally. So there's 9 other countries outside of the UK that we've played in.
Where are they?
So at the moment we've got projects with differing commercial relationships. We've got a project in New Zealand, which is a kind of franchise deal. We've got a project in Colombia, which is a joint venture. Both of those are going really well. Colombia in particular have blown me away with what they're doing there. I mean, we've got, for example, they've just figured out how to project a hologram of a business entrepreneurship trainer into prisons so that they can reach people that are incarcerated. Wow. So that, because they're obviously problematic getting into prisons. It's even harder getting out of prisons, I'm told. But they're doing things like that, which is super interesting. And of course, with AI happening, it's just who knows what the possibilities are. But I think, we've got projects in Morocco and France as well that are currently live. Morocco is a kind of white label arrangement.
Yeah.
In fact, it's an oil company that have sponsored that project. Yeah, it's super interesting. Aqua Group have said that they wanted to basically create the next Aqua Group. Aqua Group was started on a kitchen table 60 years ago, and they wanted to find the next one. So they've been using our methodology to train 1,000 Moroccan startup entrepreneurs across the country, from rural areas through to the cities. Yeah, super cool. Really interesting how they've done that. And we've partnered with HEC Paris to deliver projects in Paris. Those are the ones that are live currently. Having had our content translated into Spanish and translated into Arabic and delivered in those countries by very really, really good people. Amazing people, similar to you and I, with that sort of social value, change the world kind of mentality, doing good business and helping people to do good. I think we're only scratching the surface of what the possibilities are. And I think that, if we look back at what we're trying to do is make business accessible and make it possible for anyone to create the life they want, well, in that case, you need someone in the desert in Namibia to be able to pick up their mobile phone and watch a few videos in the same way that someone in New York City or London can access our learning as well. So there's something around more rebel business schools happening across the planet. I think that's the obvious place for us to grow. The other area for us,
as opposed to Mars,
we'll probably hold that back for now.
Across the planet, that's the
Do you
obvious.
know anyone? What else? I suppose entrepreneurship is in the UK, for example. And I've been looking at, over the years, I've been following the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, and there's something like 7 or 8% of the working age population in the UK have got entrepreneurial intention, right, over the next 12 months. So I'm interested in that, because if you look at the population, you go, oh, no, what's the adult population of the UK? It must be, 50, 60 million or something like that, right? Yeah. So if 7-8% of those have got entrepreneurial intention, there's still loads of room for us to grow in the UK. There's still work to do. But if you go to a country like Venezuela, then the entrepreneurial intention is more like 40, 50%.
Well, in some places it has to be. I mean,
out of necessity, right?
Yeah. A place like India. Yeah, every single corner is, whether it's a watch fixer or, pawn maker, those little chewy leaf bits, everybody's trying to make it down because there's no infrastructure. Hey?
The chewy leaf things, what's that like?
Variable. But, the thing is, there is no other way. You have to duck and dive. You have to create that economic capability for yourself, unless you want to move to crime, which is a route that some people end up forced down.
For sure.
But no, the UK, I guess, is very fortunate insofar as massive social safety net, which is brilliant. What is the chemistry, the biochemistry of an entrepreneur to start off with? They talk about detached house syndrome when it comes to footballers. If you come from historically, if you come from a detached house, you're not going to likely have the hunger and the passion to get out there
and the grit,
every single morning to train and do everything that's needed, because an easier life is available
Life's
to you.
too comfortable, yeah.
So is that part of it? So when you're looking at where you're going to take the school, that certainly sounds like a relevant set of criteria to judge where next.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I did you just reminded me, I did a Bloomberg interview, radio, about 2 years ago. And John, our PR guy at the time, I came off of the radio broadcast and I had a phone call straight away. We did a little debrief. Yeah. And he said, how do you think that went? And I said, I think that's the toughest radio interview I've ever had. He said, yeah, you did all right, but it was a really tough interview. And then he said, what you should have said. And I'm like, John, this would have been brilliant about 20 minutes ago. Tell me what I should have said. He said to me, and this is interesting how people have got different perspectives and how I'm still learning about my business now all these years on. He said, what you should have said, Simon, is that what Rebel Business School is doing is redefining entrepreneurship, redefining what it means. And that really struck me. I thought, yeah, that's what it is, because many of the people that come to our programs are really early stage, grassroots, kitchen table, and most of them will probably never go past that. We've had a few 6-figure earners that have come through and we're proud of them. But that's not really why we do it. We're doing it for Patricia, the woman that lives in London, who's from Peru originally, couldn't afford to fly back home to see her mum, who was, in the later stages of life, and wanted to go and spend time with her and one last hug.
She had to make some money.
She had to get cash, and she was doing this very niche, using a kind of Peruvian artistry technique of lace and making these beautiful things out of lace that you go, well, this woman needs to sell more of this stuff. And then, I'm so proud of her, because when she came, she was all over the place. She had no idea what she was doing. She didn't know how to sell. She didn't know how to promote herself. She didn't know who her customer was, and so on. Now, is that woman an entrepreneur? Well, she's not an entrepreneur if you go by the way that, our culture, society says. She's not someone that's going to necessarily employ people. Who knows, she might one day, but unlikely. Yeah. But this woman's life has been changed. She's got a strong sense of purpose. She's able to go home and see her mum. She's able to pay her bills. She's offered benefits. And to me, we just don't talk about these individuals enough. And actually the importance of entrepreneurship in giving people the power to create their own income outside of traditional methods of employment has never been more important. And I think we'll see over the next 10 years when jobs start disappearing at pace, which they've already started, actually some of these folk are going to be in a bit of a pickle unless we give them the skills, the confidence and the courage to have a go at something. And who are we to judge that, some people we meet, £100 a week is a life-changing number for them and they're happy with that. Whereas others have got, there's more ambition there. But I think both are equally valid. We had a lawyer, for example. She came to our program in the West Country. I said to her, so tell me about your business. She said, well, I used to be a lawyer. I thought, well, that's a different answer to the question that I asked. And I said, no, it's the business. Tell me about the business. She said, well, when I was a lawyer, and I said, forget the lawyer. The lawyer doesn't exist. And she said, well, my dad and my husband tell me that I haven't got a proper business. I thought, okay, this is interesting. She doesn't see herself as an entrepreneur. She doesn't see herself as a business owner. I said, I know that you used to be a lawyer, but tell me what it is that you do. She said, I run this little craft box, mail order kind of thing. Like people subscribe. It's a subscription business. They subscribe on my website, and the minimum spend is £75 a month. That's one hell of a craft box. Tell me more about that. I said, how many customers has she got? And she said, I got 56. She's got 56 customers a month spending £75 a head on a subscription. I'm like, this woman's a fantastic entrepreneur. She doesn't even know what she's created.
What she's done, yeah. Absolutely.
So I think to me, you got me on my soapbox, I'll shut up in a minute. But to me, the possibility, if you take your focus of entrepreneurship away from unicorn, the unicorns are going to be great. They're going to be fine. They've got all of the support. They've got all of the connections. If they don't make it first time, they'll probably figure it out. But if you stretch the definition of entrepreneurship and say that any single one of us, it doesn't matter what age, can figure out something to sell, figure out who the customer is, take lots of action, run an experiment, see if they like it. That's all I'm saying.
I think that's a really powerful call to action. And I guess the other piece, and I would say this, wouldn't I, because it's vested, but being able to make sure that anybody who helps you take that to a success, to be able to share the reward on a commensurate basis. And it doesn't, you don't have to have a pile of cash to start off with. It's just about being able to make sure that that contribution is recognised. So when you're looking at, we talked about going international, you've got Spanish, you've got Arabic, Chinese.
Not yet. A bit of French, but not Chinese yet.
But I mean, do you see it having scope beyond these places insofar as setting up entities in those other geographies, or do you see it pretty much as a digital service now?
Good question. I don't think it's binary, as I think we've had different experiences with the different territories that we've gone in. I can remember speaking to a guy, he described himself as, he said to me, Alistair Campbell, the spin doctor from the Labour government in the 90s? I said, yeah. He said, I'm a bit like that, but I do it for African governments instead. I went, let's talk. You sound very interesting. He said to me, whatever you bring to Africa, it will change. It doesn't matter what you bring, it will change. And I think that's the good thing too.
Take anything beyond its
contextual, isn't it?
Home arena, it will change.
And we've had different experiences of that. I mean, I've run sessions in Namibia. It was fascinating to me going to Windhoek, Namibia, standing up in front of an audience. It was the Namibian Women's Summit, and the president of the Namibian Women's Summit invited us over, and I was a keynote speaker, and she'd invited the president's wife that was coming along to the session. I was absolutely terrified, because she said to me, I want you to tell us what we should be doing entrepreneurially, and tell us what we should do with our economy at the moment. And I said, wait a minute, white man coming to Namibia telling you what you should, I don't think this is going to land very well. Can we figure that out? But it was so interesting when I was, looking in the whites of the eyes of these people. Their challenges are exactly the same to an audience in London. And that to me has been true of every single country that we've delivered. The challenges are the same. The barriers are the same. Sure, there's some contextual issues, and access to technology is sometimes different. And some of the folk in different areas are, you talk about poverty in this country. It's just a different game in other countries. Really, really challenging.
Absolutely.
But essentially, the things that prevent people from taking the action that they need to take, and some of the skills and the tools and the things that we've learned over the years about business, you just give that away to folk in a very simple way so that anyone can follow it. It's the same everywhere. But the entity, I think it's going to be a mix. We would never have had the reach in Colombia that we've had if it wasn't for Danny and Fabi that are leading that project there. So, yeah, I think there's room for both.
So is one metric for you the air miles that you'll be clocking up?
Oh man, what's the metric? I think the metric that we continue to measure is the number of people that, and this is interesting actually. So previously we've focused on the number of people that come to our program and the percentage of time that they spend with us on the program. We've had that as our metric. But what we've realised recently is you don't need to come on a Rebel Business School course to have had a life-changing impact by engaging with us in some way. For example, the podcast, The Rebel Entrepreneur, we've had just past 1 million downloads.
Wow.
We launched that in May 2020 that Alan, my business partner, leads on. I was sat in a job centre in Doncaster about 4 months ago, and I was running a session there for people that the job centre advisors had invited them to the room to listen to this guy from down south that was going to come and talk about business. You know, they were kind of folded their arms, staring at me. You know, like, what's this guy going to teach us? Yeah, and I had this woman in the front row, and I did something like 70, 80 minutes of how to start a business for free. Quick sprint through personal tax and what your income tax is going to look like if you started a business. I answered a few questions and basically said, here's how to think about getting a business off the ground from scratch. Focus on one thing. Stop trying to do everything. Just focus on one thing to start with. Figure out who your customer is and go and take as much action as you can to find them. And this woman, she stood up before the end. She started walking out. I felt really like I was a bit affronted, you know. Sorry, if I haven't finished. Where are you going? Aren't you going to stay to find out where you can come on our course? And she said, well, no, I don't need to. Yeah, I said, well, what do you mean you don't need to? Like, surely you can learn something. She said, I've got everything I need. The missing piece of the jigsaw came out of your mouth about 25 minutes ago. I've got everything I need. I'm just going to go and do it. She said, I've been sitting on this for like 18 months. I just need to get on with it. Now, up until then, were we measuring her? No. Like, when we're having all this impact on people where, you know, someone might come for one day of a course or an hour of a course or a taster session or watch a webinar. But those weren't, we were only valuing those people that came in the room. Big mistake.
What are the metrics or signals that you're looking for that will help you understand that you've got some problems in the business as it's growing?
Oh, Ifti, you're asking some big questions of me today. The one that jumped to mind is, I suppose it's fairly standard, but it's still fairly new to me. Things like aged receivables. So when you look at the number of invoices that you've got outstanding and how long they've been outstanding for, that to me is a red flag. Like, we discovered one the other day that was from an organisation up in the north that owed us a bunch of money. That was down to our processes not being tight. It's not their fault, it's our fault.
Right. That's something that you can fix, whereas the counterparty not being in a good place is a very different reason for the cash flow not to be coming in. But that cash flow does need to keep coming.
And I think, like, some of the other metrics which we've had mixed results at measuring, things like the lead indicators that I'm looking for are things like traffic to certain pages on our website is a great lead indication of how many people are going to turn up to our event in sort of 8, 10, 12 weeks time. So I think we need to get better. And if you're not
getting it, then that's a signal that you need to do something else.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the frustrations, you know, we get a lot of our attendees through Facebook ads and Instagram ads. And I think we could run exactly the same ad in a neighbouring postcode with exactly the same content, and one ad will perform brilliantly and the other ad, for no reason that we can see, will perform terribly. But we don't actually know that almost until it's too late. So moving the measurement and the focus on those metrics earlier in the process, so they become lead indicators rather than us staring at each other 24 hours before an event.
When it's come to pass and you can't do anything about
exactly,
it.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I think what you've built is astounding. The number of people that you've already impacted and the ones that you don't know how much you've impacted is incredible. I want to help, and I think there's a couple of ideas that we've had around how we may be able to support your
Thank you,
your
FD.
journey
That's
and the
amazing.
journey of Rebel Business School going
Thank you.
forward. But it's massive kudos to you, and
Thank you very much.
big
That
success
means a
for the
lot.
future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Foundermetrics. Remember, even the biggest of ambitions are within your reach when you leverage the right strategies and metrics. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and never miss a future episode. You can visit vested.com, Foundermetrics, for additional resources, articles and exclusive content. Join our growing community of entrepreneurs and founders by following us on LinkedIn or X. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Together, let's continue to unlock the metrics of success, sharing and create a brighter future.